So the rollover effect is set up to replace one image with a second image in the same place, same size on the page. That's how these are working. But if I want to set up an event so that when a user rolls their cursor over an image, like this little polar bear, it brings up the second image in that rollover, the red gradient image for Barry Lopez books, then I would need to use the swap image behavior, because that allows me to change any or all of the images on a page when a user affects another image. Let me show you how that works on a couple of different designs. So coming back to Dreamweaver, first I want to name each of these three images, because it'll help me keep track of them as I set this up. And in my testing, I found that naming these names that made sense was not a problem. So I'm going to call this Painting Thumb, because it's a thumbnail of the painting. Cards Thumb. And Berry Thumb. So just identifying each of these images in the code behind the page. And that's important, as you'll see now, I've got the first image selected. And what I want to do is to set it up so that when a user rolls their cursor over this image, the second image in the rollover effect shows up here, the one called painting2.jpg. So from the Behaviors panel now, with that first image selected, I want to choose Swap Image. This can be a little confusing at first, but bear with me because we'll do this a couple of times. Dreamweaver is immediately showing me that I have the Painting Thumb already selected. That's the one that I've selected to be the trigger. I don't actually want that image to change. I want the Paintings image to change. That's the one here that I called Paintings. And I want it to change to Paintings 2. So with my cursor highlighting Paintings, I'm going to use the Browse button to locate the painting2.jpg and click OK. What I'm telling Dreamweaver, as I click OK here, when a user rolls their mouse over this image, the second image in that one should appear. And if you see over here, two things have happened as a result. I now have an on-mouse-over trigger to swap the image, and then I have something called on-mouse-out swap image restore. That brings the original back into place when the user's cursor is no longer over the first image. Let's do that a couple more times, and I think you'll start to get the hang of it. So if I want to set this image to trigger the second one in this sequence, again I'm going to choose Swap Image. And again, Dreamweaver is showing me I've already selected the Cards Thumb. That's the image that will be affected. And I want to replace the image called C. Remember, I had to rename this with one character, but I still made a point of calling it C so I could remember it's the Cards image. I want to replace that image with Cards 2. So again, using the Browse button, I want to find Cards 2, select it, and you see now this little asterisk, which indicates that I've selected a second image there. Notice too that preload images and restore images on mouse out are optional. I always recommend that you check the Preload Images button, because that's what causes the browser to load all of the images on the page as soon as the page is opened. If you don't check this button, there can be a delay when your user rolls over an image, if the image actually has to be loaded by the browser before it can be displayed. So by default, that should be checked when you use this option. The Restore Images on Mouse Out is optional. In this case, I want that selected because I want it to go back to its original, not with the red gradient, as soon as the user doesn't have their cursor over it. But in the next swap image that I'll set up on a different page, I'll uncheck this, and I'll show you that you won't always want this option chosen. So now let's set up the third one. I'm selecting the Berry Thumb, and as soon as I choose Swap Image, again it's showing me that I've already selected Berry Thumb. What I want to change is the image I called B, and I want to replace that with Berry 2. Okay. Now let's save this page and preview it in a browser again. So I still have my rollover, and now when I roll over these little images, I bring up the second image in the image swap. And when I roll my cursor off, right, on mouse over, on mouse out, it switches back to the original image. One other little thing to note, when you set up a rollover image, that dialog includes a place to set a link. But when you set a swap image, the link is not automatically set. So if I want this image to link to the paintings page when someone clicks on it, I need to set the link just as I would set any other link. So just using the Browse to File button, I can set this to link to the main page in my paintings folder just as I would set any other link. And that will not affect the behavior I just set up. So I can set this one to link to the cards page. And you see, even though I did that, I still have my mouse over effects exactly as I set them. And finally, we'll link the berry image to the berry page. If you want to take a little time at this point and practice this, I encourage you to go ahead and finish the design for this page on your own. Remember, there's a completed version in index.html. But for now, I think 3 times the charm, and we'll move on to a different page where we'll set up a slightly different swap image effect.